the premiere, the kick in the door, waving the 4-4 episode of Comics Will Kill You podcast. Listen, we don't sugarcoat, we don't tiptoe, and we definitely don't hold back when it comes to talking about this crazy yet beautiful and sometimes frustrating but always inspiring world of comics. I'm your boy, Almega, the voice of indie comics, here to rep for the creators grinding in the trenches and the fans who live for the Wednesday fix and the dreamers dropping their heart into every page. But I ain't rolling solo. Nah. Ooh, I'm excited, baby. I got some heavy hitters that are my co-hosts. Not even, they're hosts. They're not co-hosts. They're hosts. We're all hosts. There ain't no co in here, all right? All right. This is my tag team of truth. So first up, let me bring an OG, a man I have worked with prior, a man who knows publishing inside and out. He's the true architect of the game, baby. Here's the voice of the publishing community on the other side. The ultimate comic book. Wait. No. We have a comic book black belt. We got this man. So coming from across the pond, man. The one, the only, the amazing Dave Elliott. What's popping, homie?
Whoa. After that intro, I think I can retire now.
It's energy, baby. And now listen, now with that, now let me bring up my other heavy hitter. Oh my God, listen. This one is the ultimate comic book black belt, for real. The industry's eyes and ears. She is the queen of the press game, baby. All right. She's always following the beat on Comics Beat. The one, the only, the EIC, the big boss, Heidi MacDonald.
Comics black belt. Woo! I am so here. Wow. Okay. Whole new career for me.
Wow. Listen, I just want to tell people that together we're about to dissect, debate, and maybe even destroy a few myths about the industry we love. So today we're going to be talking, some stuff, because there was a premiere at WonderCon, kind of, where we get into quality comics. I'm going to have to leave the floor to Heidi in a moment. But folks, I need you guys to strap in, grab your favorite issue, maybe even pour a drink, because we're going to get it cracking. Because here, comics will kill you, baby, and we're going to love every second of it. The show floor is now Heidi MacDonald in the game, baby. You know what? Let me give you that Piers Morgan look. No, it wouldn't work right here. She
can we do like the horn thing? Heidi MacDonald. We need. Well, we need to get some of the stadium effects. Wow, thank you, Al. Well, this is amazing. Very happy to be here, working on this project that Comics Will Kill You. They will also save your life. We're going to learn a little bit about that, and. So Dave, I have known Dave on and off for 30 years, somewhere between 30, 40 years, somewhere in that.
I'm sorry. That was
relative.
That long.
Yeah, I know, right? And at New York Comic Con last year, we were just chatting, and Dave was just dispensing wisdom and dispensing science, okay? And I said, Dave,
and I wasn't drunk either.
And he was not drunk. No, it was at an industry function. We were both just sober and open to new ideas. And I said, Dave, you should write a book. Why don't you write a book about all this? Well, he didn't write a book, but he did do a podcast. And that's what we're doing here. We are talking about Dave's incredible history. This man, now this is untold history. This is secret history because Dave does not even have a Wikipedia page. This man who is, insert horn blast there on that, right? Like, he has been in the center, peripheral to some of comics' greatest moments and most tragic, weird, and surreal moments.
Lots of those.
Lots and
Way
lots.
Too many.
I have just one, just a teaser, just a tiny. This is a little teaser. Tundra Comics, Northampton, Massachusetts. Kevin Eastman. Was there a tank?
Yes.
There was a tank. Okay. What else was there? We're going to find out because this is obviously another one of the great stories of comics. Dave has been involved in so many of them.
The Sherman tank, I believe.
What? I'm finding things out here today. See, this is what I'm saying. Comic book people are mad cool. You guys have no idea. These guys are madmen, mad women. What do you mean Sherman tank?
Well,
no, we're leaping ahead. We're leaping ahead.
we're leaping too
that
far
look
ahead.
on your face.
But
That
let's
look
just
on
say,
your face. I want you to tune in, Al. You're going to have to tune in for future podcasts.
but just explain where you saw the tank.
It was not quite at Kevin's house, but it was on the grounds of his house.
That would be Kevin Eastman, correct?
Yes, Kevin Eastman.
Yes, Kevin Eastman, co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, but that is just a teaser. Again, just a tiny soup con of the things that Dave has seen.
I agree, Heidi, because there's been times when we used to do International Comic Crusaders, my man would just nonchalantly, I was at Jack's house. What Jack? Kirby. I'm like, Jack's house. Look at this guy. I needed a broom to be sweeping up all these names he was dropping.
I know. It's thank God the floor is reinforced with these name graphics.
They be dropping like bricks, but for real.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because like what you're saying is because I remember like at the time thinking how many like doesn't everyone go to Jack Kirby's house at some point? It certainly felt that way, and I got to know him the last few years of his life, him and Roz, by the way. And they were the loveliest, oh God, they were such the most fantastic comic couple I've ever met in my life, still, even after all this time. So open, so inviting, so caring. And I just thought they were like that with everyone, and they probably were. But I was just lucky to be kind of there at the right time, at the right place, and I, got to know them both.
If I may ask for our future reference, though, what year was this visit?
Oh, I think the first time was about. I mean, I really did get like all of this happened in like the last maybe 3 to 4 years of Jack's life.
So maybe like 1990, around in there, 89, 90, 91, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like I remember the first time when I first actually talked to Jack was I was coming into one of the hotels. Like there was a hotel not far from the San Diego Convention Center. It changed I think it was Doubletree. It was called at the time, and it had a fountain outside with dolphins in it. And I came in, and I was just heading to the bar because I was going to meet some people there. And there was a staircase on the right that went up, and I just looked over. There was Jack Kirby and Roz. Jack was talking to Frank Miller. I forget who else was standing there as well. There's a very well known, and they're standing sort of halfway up the stairs. And I literally stopped dead in my tracks. I was like, "Oh my God, there's Jack Kirby!" And I was like, "Wow!" And I was just standing there, dumbstruck. Like I really was. Like it's funny. Like I've never really felt hero worship with anybody I've met or worked with, but he had that effect on me straight away. And I'm literally staring at him, and then I notice that right next to him is Roz Kirby, and she starts looking at me, and she starts waving at me, and I was going like, "Oh, hi," and she walks over. She comes down the stairs. She walks over. She goes, "Do you want to meet Jack?" I'm going, "Well, he's talking to Frank at the moment." She goes, "Don't worry about that." She takes me up, and she pulls Jack out of the conversation with Frank. She goes, "Hold on, Frank. There's someone important I want Jack to meet." And I'm like, and Jack's. I knew Frank, so Frank's looking at me like, "What?"
Important, Dave.
Yeah. So, and yeah, we had like about like a little 5-minute conversation, and they both said like, "Hey, look, we're staying here for the whole week. Come by, and maybe we can have breakfast or something." I mean, and this is just like I've just met them, right? I've told them what I was doing, which was right at the very beginning. Like, literally, I had the first A1 just come out, and they were like, "Yeah, like let's talk." And they were just like because they were curious. They just want to know, like, "Oh, you're from abroad?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's talk to you. Let's And it wasn't just about comics. It was just like they just wanted to talk.
They wanted to know who Dave Elliott was.
No, I just wanted to know what I had to say and what anybody had to say. And I think
they were very open, giving people. And, I mean, I've heard many times that they would meet fans and invite them over to their house, and Roz would give them cookies and milk. They were young fans, to be clear, young teen fans. And, opening their home. I mean, it's kind of unthinkable now, but they were very kind people. And just, Roz wanting Jack to meet people who wanted to meet him, to get that feedback. That's really a sweet story.
Well, let me ask you though, in your experience with the Bee and in the journalism, when did you start this? Did you not have the chance to maybe meet them, or was it?
Well, I used to live in Los Angeles back in the 80s, and back when a lot of this stuff was roiling, and I was writing for the Comics Journal and Amazing Heroes at that point, and working at the Hollywood Reporter as an advertising assistant. So a little different for me, but I did not get to go to Jack's house, and regret that. I mean, I could have gone to Jack's house.
Oh no!
I know, but you don't. I was a kid. I was so young. You don't think about these people.
We don't know about shit like that.
Yeah, you don't. You have to follow your moment, your bliss of the moment. But I did have dinner with Jack once, but it was just it was a dinner that was it was really more. We were taping this award show, and we were waiting for the setup. So it was me, Jack, Howard Chaykin, Frank Miller, Roz was there, of course, myself. I mean, I don't know. I forget who else was there. I don't know why.
I mean, he's always around.
Who?
Wait.
Dave not there?
No, Dave was not at this moment. But anyway, and then Jack bought us all dinner. It's like, so I could say Jack bought me a sandwich. So that is, that's something. Dave, did you ever live in Los Angeles?
Yes, I did, but not until much later. I left Los Angeles, I think about nearly 6 years ago. I lived there for 4.5 years, and then before that, I was traveling. I was traveling a lot back and forth. So I was always. I think my first trip to Los Angeles was I went there with Mike Lake after a San Diego Comic Con.
So we've all just returned from San Diego Comic-Con as we record this, and so we are jumping around a little bit in this story, but trying to kind of get a little idea of some of what it's going to cover. And just because Dave has done it all, again, he really has. I'm telling you, he has done it all. What was your first San Diego Comic-Con, Dave?
I was trying to think about this while I was in San Diego. A couple of people asked me. It was either 86 or 87.
Oh, wow.
I think it was. Because I went. This was before it moved to the convention center it's in now. So I caught the last year or two of the old convention, the old show. I used to stay in the Westgate Hotel, which was just around the corner from it. It was like a short walk from there.
Oh, wow.
Completely different show from today.
Well, if you went to the 16th, that was the 16th. It was 86.
Right.
But the show started back in 1970.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, the 16-year mark. Wow.
What was the first one you went to, Heidi?
Mine was the year before that, 1985. So, but I had been to the year before, but just for like an afternoon. That was my first time going, but I literally just an afternoon. My parents drove me down, and we went to the con for an afternoon. I met the Hernandez brothers. I met Bob Burton. I think I met Jack and Roz. I probably met the entire Hall of Fame of comics in about 2 hours. And then my parents said, let's go to Tijuana. We've never been. And my parents are really awesome. Very, my stepfather used to write jokes for Bob Hope and work at Golden Girls. They're awesome.
Really?
Well, that's a whole nother podcast, but they're very normal people. And we went just over the border to Tijuana and were so appalled by it that we probably spent like 20 minutes walking around. Then we got back in the car and drove home to Los Angeles. So
wait. I'm gonna ask though. That was little kid Heidi. That was going with the appallment of the family. But would have teenage Heidi enjoyed it?
Well, I was older than a teen. Believe me, I'm another experience. A late bloomer. I'm a very late bloomer. But no, I would not have, because we didn't get to see the cool part of Tijuana. We just on the border at that time. I remember they were selling all these Porky Pig ceramics that were quite shoddy, and I said they were off model, and we did not. It was just. It was the wrong vibe for my family. I did not go back to Mexico for a long time because of that. It used to be a thing at San Diego. Okay, Dave, I'm sure you can tell some stories about this. But it used to be, when it was in its smaller, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 person attendance, that a thing would be to go to Tijuana at night to do things. Did you ever experience that?
You're asking me?
Yes. I go to see wrestling, Lucha Libre or something.
You are watching little people wrestling,
Yes.
So you might be able to help me with remembering this guy's name. He was the original editor of Piranha Press for DC.
Mark Neville.
Yes.
Yeah. Before you even move on, I just want to say, folks, you saw that? You might know he said, no, I don't might. Heidi is boss. Jesus, that's what I said.
I went to Vegas with Mike and Bob Wayne, so yes.
Story. See, Al, this is one of the reasons why I thought this would be good, because I said this to Heidi when I met her when we were talking in New York. There's probably stories I've got or information I have where Heidi has another part of that story that I don't know about.
Oh, you don't remember.
So I'm expecting that as we move along, we're going to find, I know one of the things about this was when Heidi was thinking, hey, Dave, I'm going to get all this stuff out of you from this past. But I think as we go along, we're going to get some stuff out of Heidi. And I think this is what's going to be interesting, because it's.
I'm intrigued.
There will be 2 books.
Yeah.
I want to be getting shit out of both of you, though. There might even be a third. That's the mega perspective.
Or a maxi series, even.
So anyway, you went to Tijuana with Mark Neville.
Yeah, he took a group of people down, and I was in talks with DC about a rather large project at the time, so I was kind of in the group. And yeah, it was. I don't think I could want to quite tell you what he was wanting to see.
Don't compromise, bro.
But look, things were done that were very problematic, I'm sure. But there was also trips to see Lucha Libre. That was another thing that people would do. Right. I was always invited. They're like, Heidi, we're going to Tijuana to see Mexican wrestling. Don't you want to come? Right. And I like to stay close to the Comic-Con. I didn't like to leave the magic circle, but it just kind of gives you an idea of just how the con had, different vibe, different feeling, different.
Excuse my ignorance here, because again, I'm a New York native. I'm an East Coast native. So from San Diego to Tijuana, what's that drive like? An hour, 2 hours, 50 minutes?
An hour.
Is it that long?
And it's not that long. It's maybe half an hour. I mean, it's right there.
The train just goes tram that goes along outside the convention center goes straight down to the border. You get out and you cross the border. You just walk across. Yeah.
Well, then you could walk across. I don't know how it is now, but might be a little different these days. But yeah, it was simple. You just go in the car. They're like, "Oh, do you live?" I mean, I do remember this part. It's because I'd never been to a foreign country either. I know they were like, where do you live? Like Los Angeles. Okay. Where do you coming back? Where do you live? Los Angeles. Okay. You don't have no passports, nothing.
Back then, yeah. Now you need. Now they take your blood and an eye scan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the second time I went down, I didn't realize until we were coming back across the border that I'd left my passport in my hotel.
This is a famous story. I remember this.
I need to know this, Dave.
But it was
how are you still alive and not?
No, because this shows you how different things were back then. I wasn't the only person either. Somebody else had left their ID back, and we literally just bluffed. And someone was talking to the security guards, and we just snuck past this. Literally, just snuck past.
Wait a minute! You illegally crossed the border.
Thank God he's safe in England now.
Yep.
That's hysterical. Are you serious, bro?
Yeah. And I mean, security was so lax there. I mean, they literally weren't even paying attention.
But there was one English person, and maybe it wasn't you, but I do remember one of those early cons. There was like, Saturday, hey, what's going on? It's like, oh, so-and-so, went to Tijuana and didn't have his passport. So he got, detained. We didn't call it detained then, they got, thrown in jail. Like there was somebody who had a very rough time coming back. Maybe it was Mike Lake.
I love comic books. Oh my God.
No, it wouldn't be Mike.
It wouldn't have been Mike.
Mike would have brought his passport for sure. But it's like, and it wasn't like, Simon Bisley or somebody like that who for sure wouldn't bring his passport, right? It was more like some hapless folk who, like you, didn't know he needed a passport to come back. And do you know this at all?
Well, don't forget, there's also the convention, those convention stories that kind of took a life of themselves on. So it's from what could be just as simple as like, well, if a passport had to sort of duck through, suddenly becomes like, oh my God, did you hear about Dave? He had cavity search, the whole thing.
Oh my God, that's the new movie. Dave got fingered.
Yeah, I do think there was. I do just vaguely recall that there was. It wasn't the this wasn't the only or first or only time that people went to Tijuana and forgot their passports or had difficulties. The border crossing is a little no country for old men. Let's put it that way. So
yeah, it's funny how when you said that, like, I'm not going to tell you their names, but there's a couple of English creators that came to mind, or British creators that came to mind, and I just went, maybe it was one of them.
Yeah. Well, we are jumping ahead. We're jumping all around in the story, but
it's for a reason, Heidi. Though I want people to understand, like, what they're all gonna be in store for in the future. Some wild ass stories from my man Dave. But I know that we want to really back a bit and kind of get back on lane because again, you got WonderCon talking stuff. So
no.
So go ahead, Dave. You gotta let Heidi get back to
Dave. What were you gonna say, Dave?
No, I was just gonna say it was like because I wanted this one to be more of a tease about what was coming because I think already what we've got across is like both of us have a long history in comics. A lot of people might not be aware of or remember the fact that you worked at DC Comics for a while, and so you probably got a lot of stories from there that, like, I'm going to try and pull some of those out of you. So I think, and I think, like, it's putting sort of this industry into some sort of context, because I think one of the things I think a lot of people want out of comics when they're desperate to sort of what goes on behind the curtain, like who's the Wizard of Oz, and I'm one of the things I want to sort of try and get across in these is that you don't always want to know what's going on behind the curtain. It can be it's surprising, it's complex, it's one of the things I wanted to get across as well is I've worked for companies and projects that have failed purely because, not because of lack of sales or anything, but purely because of people's feelings and emotions to others sabotaged a project and even a company. So, yeah.
The human element is always
it's always there,
and sometimes it supersedes money. Even you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, at the present moment, you are bringing back A1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
A1 deadline. So
A1 deadline, yeah, baby.
Well, so So really, what I'm doing with A1 Deadline is, Tom Astor. Oh,
before you go on, I want to just say that we're going to go back to the origin of A1. But what is A1 Deadline? It is an anthology, right?
It's an anthology, and it's an anthology of independent creator-owned comics. As I've told everybody that's involved so far, I come into this. I own the title of A1 and Deadline. Tom Astor gave me the ownership of Deadline a couple of years ago. I've been trying to figure out something to do with Deadline, and actually, it kind of, when I thought about it and I started thinking about putting the two together, it kind of made sense, and it worked well, at least for me, and it works for me. And it kind of comes from one of the frustrations as someone who's been in this industry as long as I have. I've seen the loss of places where people can have their first worksy print, where a creator can go, hey, look, I've got a few days off next week and I want to do something just fun. Hey, Dave, I've done this 3-page strip and it's bonkers. It's nothing like my normal work. It's crazy. What do you think? And I go like, oh, that's fucking amazing. That's really cool. Do you want me to run it? And so that creators have somewhere, an outlet where they can just do something they've never done before. But I think more than anything else, I think the part, I want to turn A1 Deadline into a community. I want it to be a place where creators can do something they've not done before. Creators can break in. I want to create an atmosphere that invites people.
Bring it!
I gotta that sports horn sound effect.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But invite people in and inspire them. Like, I want to have, it won't be in this first one I do, but when the regular book gets up and running, because this one is just going to be like a special, because I want to be honest, I just want to see, I've had a ton of interest in it. I've had so many people sign up for our newsletter, and I just want to see how that transfers into orders and who's actually up for buying this. And that will give me an idea, a sense of how it proceeds. Because my dream is I want to launch this as a quarterly, like as soon as next year. It'll be an annual subscription, so you'll order 4 books at a time. We'll release them quarterly. But I want to have sections in it that inspire people. It's like how to do things, like whether it's how to draw something, even crafts, how to do something with crafts, how to do something with your hands, something, how to make zines. And then with the newsletter, I want to do things like where if someone's made a zine and we think it's cool, I'll do like, okay, well, look, we'll make a PDF out of this. And when I do a newsletter, I'll blast it out so that everybody that's subscribed to the newsletter can download your zine if they want to. And so any message you have, any thoughts you have, any ideas you've had, you can spread around. That's the first cover, by the way.
That's
amazing. You can buy the T-shirt on the Kickstarter.
Wait a minute, let me see that T-shirt. Hold on, look at that.
Is that by Shaky Kane, by the way?
It is. It is indeed.
Good old Shaky. So, I want to interject on this idea, is that it is very much an idea that I have had as well, because I just, I have edited comics, and I'm definitely not editing comics now because it's very taxing to do professionally. And, but, I love doing it. Every once in a while, I'll take on a freelance project just to kind of get the old feeling back, but
not stay rusty,
Yeah, but if I were to I was thinking of a project very much like this, because we see so many comics at our 6-issue miniseries that are a movie pitch, right? And almost everything that IDW and Boom and Dark Horse and Oni and let alone like Aftershock and, now Ignition and all of these companies do is, it's a 6-issue miniseries about, that's John Wick meets Great British Baking Company,
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, where do you get the new characters? Like, I bet you people do not like, I think one of the things that comics do best is create ongoing characters that we love and we want to visit over and over and over again. That's the basis of the comic strip. It's the basis of webtoons, web comics. Obviously, the MCU, DCU movies are based on these characters that we love so much. And there isn't really a place to introduce them anymore, right? Like,
Right.
and it's, to me, they're really missing the boat. To me, like all the Ignition presses and I mean, no offense to Ignition, we love you, Jamie and Philip and everybody, but if you create the next, Jeff the Land Shark, for instance, or Deadpool, or brand new character, right? That's very much comics. So I don't know if that's exactly what you do with A1, but
I love how we get stuck though on that word when you say like a brand new character. But who's the new character? Who's still taking it? Is it still Spider Kid? Is he still high? I don't know. We don't know who the future is anymore when it comes to new characters, though. That's sad, but that's another topic.
What A1 deadline will be that if someone has something they want to do and it's a character driven and they go like, hey, here's this character, like I mean, like Rufus Dayglow has a strip he wants to do on a regular basis. It's a new character, and it sounds amazing actually. But I'm not expecting everyone to come with a character. A lot of people are coming with a story, sometimes a very personal story. One of the things that I think I want to be really open to is anything, so that and this is where the A1 component of deadline comes in, because A1 was always about, like, the reason it was called A1 was I didn't want, like, Bulgaria and myself, we didn't want anybody to presume anything about what they want, what we required, what we needed from them. It was, no, it's up to you. The A1 was just about kind of, we're trying to set a standard, like, just do your best job, like do as good as you can, but have fun and enjoy yourself. And Deadline was very much a British pulp culture pop, and that will still remain, but it's going to be international though. So I'm already talking to artists from Japan, Indonesia, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, Mexico, Peru. So it's going to be international. There will be features, there'll be articles. And again, Heidi, if there's an idea you have and you go like, oh, there's an idea, seriously, it's open. If you got one.
I'll pose it on a comic rug for you if you want.
Yeah. I mean,
well, you never know. You never know. You got to do everything once. That's my motto.
Yeah.
Try everything once. So, but I want to go. Okay, so here's where we put in the shimmery curtain, the tunnel, Scooby Doo or whatever it is, Batman tunnel, back to the past. Now we're going back in the past. So let's return to the year.
I'm gonna do a rewind.
Yes.
Remind me, I gotta get a rewind.
Do a little rewind. All right, let's go. And Dave, let's go back. I think when we had our little intro that we were talking talking about your time at Quality Comics.
Right.
So this is the early 80s, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Mid 80s. Yeah.
Yes. And so Quality.
Wait. Before you go onto that, where can people listen to that kind of little first piece of that? Because you said that you guys talked about it prior a little bit.
That's your YouTube channel, isn't
it? Yes, it's up on there, and we talked about your background in art and how you got the job, and what, you were just a kid. What were you? You were 23, 24 years old or something ridiculous?
Yeah,
maybe 25. Yeah. And you were made like editor of this whole thing, and so that is quite a time. And so Some of the people that were published by Quality Comics do include Alan Moore. It was the home of V for Vendetta. That was before you came on board. And Marvel Man. We only ran a whole novel link or, book about Marvel Man here on the beat. We serialized it. And some other classic British series were in this publisher. But also at this time, it was the the Renaissance. It was very much a Renaissance, or not even a Renaissance, because that implies you're going back to something, I think. This was really the first time that British comics had struck out, and they had this incredible bench of talent, just some of the all-time greats. And you were there, you were working with some of them, creating these comics. And this is when the idea for the first A1 came about. Is that correct?
It came about afterwards.
Okay. Well, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk a bit about your last years at Quality and transitioning into A1.
Quality didn't last very long, at least from my perspective. I came in, I met Des when he was he showed me, he took me into his studio, which was in the basement of his comic shop on the King's Road in London. And he showed me what was most of the art for what was going to be the next 2 issues of Warrior, neither of which came out. And he was looking for help, but he wasn't sure what was going on. But he was kind enough, the reason I'd got into his shop was I was selling postcards and greeting cards that I drew and made myself through companies like Paper Chase in London. And I tried expanding into comic shops, and I did some themed horror cards and things like that. And so Forbidden Planet started stocking them. And I thought if Des might, and Des was like, "Oh, this is very good, very good. Hey, what are you interested in?" And we just started talking about comics. And then he said, "Oh, well, look, I'll give you a call when something comes up." And the first thing that came up was a mural outside his shop, which I ended up doing for him. But then at this point, they were publishing Eclipse, were doing the Miracle Man, referring Marvel Man, Axel Press Button, and things like that. And Des gave me a call and said, "Hey, look, I need your help. Our contract with Eclipse says we've got to give them an issue of we're going to do a 3D comic that's of old Marvel Man stories, but I have nothing to go by. So I've just got some old comics. So what I need to do is have them basically photocopying really grainy old comics, enlarge them, and then on a light box, I trace them off and clean them all up and made them look nice and pretty, like they were fresh artwork." And so Gary Leach did one. I did a couple. So that was kind of my first intro. And then when I gave that to him, he said, "By the way, it looks like we're going to be getting the rights to reprint the 2000 AD material," which at that point were being published by Titan under Eagle Comics. And so they had the rights and said, would I come on and be editor and art director for the line? So at the time, I'm like, sure, yeah, you're going to pay me as well? Good. Okay, great. So that's kind of how I got into it.
So, all right. Whew, my head is spinning with questions here. Because you just wrapped up this giant ball of yarn. Literally every noun you had in everything you just said spins off into a whirlpool of comics history. Eclipse Comics, for instance. Founded by the Mulaney brothers, Jan and Dean, and then editor-in-chief Cat Ironwood.
Yep.
Quite a character, a big influence in my life, by the way, and I lots and lots of respect to Cat. I don't think she gets, nobody knows who she is anymore. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. But that also, I don't understand. Okay, so as not being an expert in English comics history, which obviously I will be by the time this project is finished. So Titan Comics is still around to this day, run
Yeah.
by Nick Landau, right? Originally co-founded, I think Nick did found it, right? But they were the publishers of Judge Dredd. And Judge Dredd, as I understand it, was the character that really revitalized, or not revitalized, created this whole English independent scene. Is that right?
Well, hold on. They didn't publish, they reprinted
Okay. Okay.
from
Yeah.
2000 AD, which
Right.
was originally published by a company called IPC.
Right. Okay.
So IPC then sold it to a company called Fleetway,
Okay.
and then Fleetway sold it to the video game company Rebellion.
Rebellion, which are the current owners.
Yep.
Right. Because the thing is that prior to this, English comics really consisted of the Beano and Dennis the Menace, right? Like there was me, and Marvel Man had been this character that went back quite a way. So there were some British superheroes. And I would say by my knowledge of them, there was a certain quaintness to these characters. I mean, even Marvel Man in its original form was more like Shazam or something like that.
Yeah, Warrior magazine. Yeah.
Warrior magazine. Okay.
Right.
And so, the reason why we had a full book length history of Marvel Man is because every single company that existed in England was somehow caught up in its publishing history. If I'm not wrong, I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But again, Judge Dredd was a formative character in the British comic scene, and it was licensed at this point. So it was a licensed character.
So Titan licensed it, and then Quality licensed it.
Right. Because to me, just before you explain it, because to me that's like, oh yeah, Superman. Oh yeah, well, it's owned by DC, but hey, we're going to license it out to Marvel, and now Dark Horse is going to do it. So anyway.
Oh no. So it was just to reprint, like no new stories, just to reprint. And the thing I was actually going to say is, a lot of people were like, when you think of British comics outside of 2000 AD, you think of Beano and Dandy, like you just said. But there was a lot of other comics, a lot of action adventure comics. And if you, for instance, if you look at, say, Brian Bolland's work, Brian Bolland's work was very influenced by a Spanish artist called Jesus Velasco. Jesus Velasco, and a comic strip that you'll hear Brian Bolland reference many times is the Steel Claw. And imagine a James Bond character who has a steel claw, but basically when he sticks it in a socket and he basically electrocutes himself, the rest of his body goes invisible and you can just see the claw. And so there's stuff like that. There's I could go into
I am selling a short. There's Modesty Blaze. There's Dickie Dare.
No. So that's a newspaper strip.
I know.
Just to be accurate, that's a newspaper strip. But that's it.
That's him right there, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you went to see, here's the thing, and I know we're objecting, and I'm talking a lot, and this is Dave's story, but
no.
You went to, and I keep bringing them up because they're the new players in town, and they're doing great things, and so it's not. And I love them, but just if you went to Ignition Press and said, I want to do a comic about a dude who sticks his hand into the socket and he becomes invisible except for the claw, they would not publish this comic. Okay. Because that's probably not. Right. And yet it's a lasting, cool thing. You should be doing people with invisible hands or invisible bodies.
No, especially
it was the 90s.
It looks like you're a fister.
So the Steel Claw was kind of, I can't remember the exact date, but it was kind of like the end of the 50s into the 60s. Like we have things like Dan Dare, Trigon Empire. Like if you see the Trigon Empire books that Rebellion have been publishing, they're amazing. It's like Don Lawrence's artwork is phenomenal. Like the comic that got me collecting comics at all was a comic we had in the UK called TV21. And it was basically comic strips. It was a weekly comic. And every week it was, do you remember the puppet show, Thunderbirds and Captain's? So they were licensed all those strips, but they had literally the top illustrators in the country drawing these strips. the quality of people like Frank Bellamy, Ron Embleton, Jerry Embleton, Mike Noble, these are guys who were so phenomenal. Like, see, that's not the best of it. Like TV21, yeah, that's a late on the game.
That's a later one, but it's still TV21 and the other joint.
Oh, try getting
yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like, and if you look at people like Chris Weston, who used to work with Don Lawrence as an assistant, like still, like you can see it in his work. He's still got that classic training in his artwork. Like Chris is so like I don't understand why like he's not a megastar or anything, but his stuff's phenomenal.
So okay. I mean, we're being educated about the British comics, but Judge Dredd did represent the kind of indie spirit that was going on in comics around the world at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think the 2000 AD was basically the comic that really ignited so much excitement in the UK and fandom. Like, you know, for an artist in the UK, all of a sudden it was like no one was interested in Batman anymore. Everyone wanted Judge Dredd. Like Judge Dredd was the character. Like you hadn't made it until you'd drawn at least one Judge Dredd strip.
Well, what let me ask you this now, because as the indie guy here, because 2000 AD was indie, you know, Pat Mills, John Wagner,
Alan Grant,
Kelvin Gosnell, all those cats, right? Independent guys, right? Underground guys, you know, Pat Mills considered the godfather in the comics out there in the UK, supposedly. I mean, so what was the comic scene like prior? I mean, was everything really big to Marvel, DC before these guys came around and said, yo, let's give you alternatives?
I think it was 2000 AD was the first one that really struck. Like it was fandom was growing at that time. Like fandom in the UK was like the US. It was just starting to. We had our first conventions and around the sort of like the late 60s into the early 70s. So it was just pooling together. So there was a lot of comics that kind of missed out on that sort of those artists being able to have sort of, you know, fans of their work. They just, you know, a lot of them they did the strip, handed it in, and that was it. They didn't think about and a lot of them, they never got their originals back. So they didn't have an extra market. They couldn't sell their artwork to anybody. So there was no connection. Like you couldn't call somebody up and say, hey, I just saw that strip in TV21. Could I buy that Thunderbird spread? That just didn't happen.
I think that's one of the things that why I'm getting confused about, or, you know, like, well, why were they licensing out Judge Dredd? Why were they licensing out the publishing? Why weren't they doing it themselves? But they didn't have like the infrastructure that at this point to do that kind of thing, right? Like,
well, you have to, yeah. I mean, it's like you stick to what you're good at. You like they were a publisher of newsstand comics and magazines.
Yeah. And the first 2000 AD was literally like a newspaper-looking comic book. That's why it's very hard to find a surviving issue number 1 of a 2000 AD. I'll find
But all British comics were printed like that. They weren't except for things like actually to go back to TV21 was the first time it was printed on really nice paper, like the Eagle, the old Eagle was printed the same way. But most comics weren't. They didn't expect anyone to keep them. They were disposable. They were like you read them and chucked them. Like a lot of British comics. That's what I did with them. I would read it. I'd swap with someone. Like my elder brother for a while, for a year or two, bought comics and try getting that comic with the actual space spinner still taped to the front.
What do you mean? Wait. So that was an actual, like, it had a gimmick on top of it?
Yeah, it had a little plastic red spinner that you could flick, and it was like a little mini frisbee.
Oh, really? Oh, all right. So if you could have it like that, you're not gonna find this, I think. So
no, there are copies out there, but they go for hundreds of pounds.
Could I just to give this a little context, though? That's very interesting because European comics magazines I believe of this time even were very, very Disney focused. Like Europe has always been obsessed with Walt Disney, and there was Topolino in Italy, Pichou in France, and Mickey Mouse in Germany. And they would
Scandinavia.
oh well,
Up
don't
north,
even go there. They're obsessed. Like Don Rosa's a household name there. I mean, literally, and it's crazy.
Did you know Michael Gilbert's done a ton of work for Disney?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Well, I'm actually talking to some of these publishers for an event later next month, so bring that up. But the kids magazines at the time had these cool inserts, like they always came, like they did come with these extras, and like in America, I think the mailing was very onerous because we didn't always get like the cool flickers or stickers or things that you put together in the magazines, as I remember. Right, we did not have that. And then
but you didn't need to, though. You didn't need to.
Mailer. You have to be lucky enough to go to a newsstand that maybe actually had it. At least for me. But for me, it was newsstand. Was I lucky enough that mommy that day when she took me to the avenue, where cause I didn't have comic shops that weren't aware of them, at least at my age when I discovered comics. So comic book stores was my newsstand. So that's what hopefully I find a gimmick, Did I ever find a gimmick? No. When did I find gimmicks? When I discovered my first comic shop, I said, ooh, glow in the dark covers, ooh, glasses for 3D, ooh, records.
Oh, yeah.
I got my Nexus #1 with the record, the OG, still with the record. Feel me?
Or you'd have a comic that would be bagged with a trading card.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which I still have some of those.
Yeah. And you know what, people, guess what? The internet doesn't come bagged with a trading card. Okay.
That's right.
And it does not have an NFT is not the same. So we go back to the print when you get those bonus. Okay. Because I did not go I did not go to the newsstand like you did, Al. My bonus was in the Cracker Jacks, the toy and the surprise at the bottom of the Cracker Jacks. And I still have one or two of those because they were they were amazing. Of this book.
I'm giving you the biggest high five when I see it. I was a Cracker Jack kid too. I used to look at my little tattoos.
The tattoos, yes. There was this book called Hello 1984. Was all about how we'd have flying cars and everything. So anyway, I just want to put the context of the kids magazines in Europe, as I understand it. I'm sure someone who really studies the history knows more about it. But from my time at Disney, we got a lot of European magazines, and I understood that what you just showed with the extra and all that was very common. The other thing I wanted to bring up, just to give what you're talking about context again, with Judge Dredd being again this real groundbreaking character for the British comics industry, was that this was worldwide. Okay, like in France, like I always thought that comics were just super well known in France, or considered the ninth art and all that from Jump, and they did have more respect, but they really took a lot of their cue from the American undergrounds with Robert Crumb, because I was told when I went to Angoulême that that's what the big French comics festival, that's what really put the French comics industry doing things that were really unique, was and getting more personal and more literary, I guess, because of course they had Tintin and Barbarella and all that stuff, but they weren't quite as elevated, let's say, until this period of the 70s. And in the United States, we were having, certain things, and a lot of them we were looking to 2000 AD. I think that was very influential on the U.S., but we were starting to have the indie publishing. Will Eisner was doing Contract with God. ElfQuest was coming, starting to think of this stuff. The other indie. So it was really kind of this worldwide revolution in comics, that they had been considered kid stuff, adventure stuff. Comic strips were off here in their own little world, but it was really in the zeitgeist from the late 70s on that comics could do so much more. I
think it's funny. Everything was feeding off each other, because the the more you could find it. Like it originally, earlier on, it was hard to find. Like I remember once, I only spoke to Al Williamson once, but we were having a chat, and he was talking about the fact that he had someone in England, a friend of his in England, used to send copies of TV21 to him because he loved Frank Bellamy's artwork, and he had someone who would cut out. There was a daily strip called Garth by Frank Bellamy, and he had someone who would cut them out and send them to him. Because because once he mentioned that, I laughed and I said, that explains so much. And he goes, why? And it goes, because I've seen strips of yours where you took a spaceship from a Star Trek strip from Mike Noble that was only published in England, and you used that same spaceship. And he laughed and he goes, well, yeah, it was that sort of, Wally Wood thing of like, hey, look, if someone else has done it better, just trace it off and make it your own. But it was, and I think so to me, it was like, you look at people like Kaza in France, in Metal Hurlant, and even Mobius, it's like, oh, well, I'm seeing what Robert Crumb's doing. Imagine if I add a science fiction element to that.
Yeah, because Metal Hurlant was also part of the same time period, which was the big heavy, known as heavy metal in the U.S. But this was absolutely part of the same revolution. Epic magazine in the United States, that was kind of edited by the great Archie Goodwin. That was kind of what was taking the influence and putting it in there. And at the same time, again, more human and humanistic and literary stories were also coming in all of these comics cultures. So yeah. Go on, sorry.
No, all I was going to say is I do remember, I remember it was probably 91, 92, that very, very early 90s. And literally, I think everyone I spoke to just thought that this was it. This was going to be the beginning of this massive golden age for graphic novels and comics, acceptance everywhere. It was going to be such a boom. It was going to be wonderful for all of us. And then Marvel put paid to that, a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, well, it just got put off by 10 years. By the 2000s, by this century, the 21st century is the century of comics for sure. I wanted to ask you, though, what your attitude about this was. You were a kid growing up, obviously reading some comics, and now you were a young man making comics. And so what was your attitude just as you in this exciting time of new characters, new approaches?
I mean, it felt exciting. I was ready to ride that wave. It was like, this was great. This was fantastic. It was like, everyone was excited. Everyone had great new ideas. And it's interesting, sort of like, because one of the things that when you're older and you can look back and you realize that, like, I was probably born at just the right time that I caught the end of one wave, swept it up. I carried on with it. Like, as the new comics wave, like when Eclipse were doing what they were doing, Dark Horse, even Star Reach, like, were doing stuff. And I was riding that. And it was funny. I came to a realization at one point when I realized, and I noticed that Marvel and DC were both copying what everyone else was doing. They were, I think part of it was they didn't want their creators to leave. They didn't like when Alan Moore started doing projects for other companies. They were like, well, let's do Vertigo, let's do something else, and let's age up our life.
Let's get indie-ish.
Yeah. And so what happened is, and I remember talking, I remember talking to Paul Levitz about this in his office once. I was like, don't you ever feel that, like, you're losing your place as, like the only reason we can do everything we're doing is because you and Marvel keep bringing in a new audience. You're the ones who are bringing in the kids, keeping the kids going, getting them. And then as the kids get older, they want something else. And so that's why they're going to other comics.
That's the main IP. I've always said that. I call DC and Marvel the marijuana of comics, the gateway. Well,
they were.
They're the gateway, and they open. I want to put in. I know, kind of fucked up ton of metaphors and whatnot, Well, I'm just saying it's the gateway drug into comic because you know those IPs. But then, yeah, you're right. As you get older, you're like, yo, well, what else is there? Then you find Image, you find the Dark Horses, you start finding total indie icons, like dudes that are self-publishing and ladies that are self-publishing. I'm just saying that it is DC and Marvel are the gateway.
They were, and I think that.
I mean, to this day, they still are though.
I would say Scholastic and manga.
Yeah, Scholastic and manga, especially manga, is really the gateway now. We have no idea, like this. I want to have a little bit of the Twilight of the Gods of this because I'll tell you, the generation of young folk now are raised on manga and anime.
Yeah, my daughter's one of them. I'm a father of a 24-year-old. And I'm a comic guy. I introduced her to comic. I had her naming every superhero by the age of 6. But she's a manga girl, yes, Sonic girl. She appreciates comics, yes. But what I mean by that is that through movies, like when people want to get.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I mean that's the gateway that leads to them to define comics, but then that ultimately leads them to finding manga. Then they just drop us when they see, oh, this is nothing like the movies.
Well, using your analogy, then I would say Marvel and DC started off as, we're going to sell you marijuana to get you hooked, and there was Dark Horse to sell you crack. But Marvel.
What's mechanical cake then, man? That's
I don't know. I would call Dark Horse more like, I would say they were maybe more like cocaine, and then came Image Comics, and that was crack.
I was just it was the first one that came to mind. But the thing is, if kids come into it now and they can't find marijuana, the first thing they're offered is crack.
So we need to stop this metaphor right now because it's really putting it in the wrong.
Yeah, but I was saying they find good stuff. They're finding stuff outside of the mainstream.
Yeah,
they're finding more entertainment, or rather, I feel this is new. I'm finding something new. It's not old. Is it that? Do you think? Are things getting aged to the point that you like it, but that's so old school. Like the old school. Let's say 40s heroes that we saw back in the day, the action adventure heroes. When we were kids, did we really find them cool? No, we found X-Men cool and other genres. Like we were getting over that generation. I think so. This generation is getting over who we thought were cool.
Yeah, I mean, like the all winners squad, or what they're called, or the Justice Society. Yeah, it's kind of like when you see them and they're so.
Dated.
They're just so dated. And
that said, James Gunn made Hawkgirl cool in Superman, and he kind of made
anyone said I'm with Heidi. Yes,
he made the whole Justice Society idea, which is basically what it is in Superman. He made it relevant. He made it fun. People are like, I want to see more.
Oh yeah,
Mr. Terrific. And here's the thing. I wrote about this actually reviewing Fantastic Four movie, which just came out as we watch this, and kids growing up in the 90s, so we're talking millennials, they had Batman, the animated series, and they had X-Men, the animated series, because there were no kids comics in the 90s. And this is a whole thing that, my career is based on. So at some point we'll talk about that. But they did not have comics that made them love these characters. But later on, at the end of the decade, the X-Men movie came out, the first one, with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And this sort of set off a lot of the interest in the Marvel characters, and it was the nostalgia for that cartoon that carried it over, right? And a lot of people have said that the only reason that kids stayed interested in DC characters was because of Batman, the animated series, and it bringing in all the guest stars. And again, that made those characters relevant for people who were older in the 2000s. With Fantastic Four, it's really struggling. I mean, it had great first weekend, yes, but now it's kind of really fading fast. You know what? Kids don't know who the Fantastic Four are. They have no idea.
You're right. You're Heidi. You're absolutely right. I grew up with Fantastic Four. I'm familiar, but again,
Right.
I'm a man of a
We,
certain age.
but we watched that cartoon that was on. Now cartoons don't exist anymore. They sit,
But
they
not just
watch
a
it on
cartoon,
YouTube.
Heidi. My
Yeah.
exposure to Fantastic Four was going to the pharmacy,
Mhm.
and then back then they used to have the Fantastic Four coloring book, the Fantastic Four, you know, the hardcover little readers back in the day
Mhm.
as a kid. So one of my first exposures out of sight of my Christ Star when I found it was Fantastic Four, the first
Amazing.
family.
Yeah, but you know that, look, they might know who the Fantastic Four are because there's Disney books, there are kids books, but they don't have a reason to love the
No one
Fantastic
does,
Four,
yeah.
right?
Not unless they're of a certain
And
age.
and so and you know, and young adults, but because we're really talking about young adults,
Yeah.
they don't have a
Or
reason
old
to be like,
adults.
finally Reed Richards has a movie. I can't wait. You know, it's not like it was with Harley Quinn, right? Or you know, Storm or Wolverine is the perfect example. You know, it's like they saw those cartoons and like, oh, these characters are great. And then the movie's like, yeah, finally I get my Wolverine. So it's just like, you know, we've missed, you know, this is a whole thing with children's entertainment in general, but we're not seeing those Marvel and DC characters in animation or in a format. I should say a format that is keeping them relevant necessarily for younger audiences. And you know, but guess what? They are watching anime. Tons and tons and tons and tons
I
of
mean,
anime.
but Marvel and DC both experiment with an anime-ish style, you know. So, in your opinion, why do you think that failed? Too little, too late,
Well,
just the right theme for
I
it?
think I don't know. We haven't found the secret sauce yet. You
Yeah, 'cause
know?
I know X-Men. I mean, not just X-Men, but Marvel did a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
like stuff with trying to anime 12,
It didn't work.
12 episode series. You know, the I would say that the artistry was beautiful, but I think they failed. Like I think they tried that with the Black Widow Punisher movie for Marvel anime style. It just you're trying to give us a love story with the two of the most violent characters.
There's a Punisher Black Widow love story?
And that's what it felt like. Yes, in the anime story, it felt like they were trying to get
Oh, in the
romance.
anime.
Anime stuff. Please listen.
I,
I have it. I think I gotta send
missed
it to
that.
you. I
Yeah.
watched it. It is horrible.
All right, run out.
This is probably why you have not heard of it. They probably try to hide it and scrub it. Guess what? Omega got it, baby. You ain't scrubbing shit from Omega, baby.
Well, we will return to this. And I think we don't want this first episode to be so long that it becomes daunting to folks. So I want to get back.
Right. We can go a little bit back. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
We're
let's
at
just
our mark. We could do another 23 minutes and we go, you know.
Yeah. So just to come back to Dave and this time. So again, you're at this exciting time, and you were just talking about how your time at Quality didn't last that long. So what was the end of your time at Quality?
Well, the end of my time at Quality was actually brought about because the High Society, which was the porn magazine in the US, was the funder of it. It was actually it was funded by High Society, and it was being supervised out of Spain by a gentleman called Lee Moncho. So they hired Des as the kind of the publisher, the editor-in-chief sort of thing of it. So he took on the publisher role, basically brought me in to be the art director, managing editor, to basically put the whole thing together. So basically the way it ran was Des put together his editorials, and kind of that was it. They pulled the plug, as I found out later, because he was spending way too much money that they couldn't see, and neither could anybody else. And they took. I believe it was handed. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who took over. It was an American. He lives in New Jersey. Used to run it's on the tip of my S&Q Publishing.
Oh, Sal Quatruccio?
Yes, Sal Quatruccio. Yes, he took over. So after I'd left, I bumped into Lee Moncho purely by accident. And the first thing he goes like, "Hey Dave, how you doing?" And I said like, "Well, the first thing is like, it'd be great if you paid me the money you owed me." And he was like, "I paid everything. I said, "Well, it didn't reach me." But what he did do was one of the things that I had is like, Des was notoriously cheap. So rather than pay, Fleetway was going to charge us for things like, here's a print of the Judge Dredd logo. And Des would go like, can you draw that? So basically I traced off and redrew the logos just so we had our own copies that Des didn't have to pay for. But I had them all. And Lee was wondering like, hey, do you still have those? I said, yeah. He goes, look, all right, I'll give you like $1,000 if you can give me all of those. I was like, absolutely.
So I got to jump in here, Dave. What was Des spending the money on?
House in Brighton. I really don't know. It was Lee showed me one of my own invoices. And he said because he said I have to say, Dave, we all thought that you were the most expensive art director. I said did you know what I did? And I explained to him what I actually did. And he goes, oh, I didn't know that. And then he said, and he pulled out one of my invoices. He said, because we still thought that was too much. I looked at it, it goes, well, that is too much because someone has put a 1 in front of my invoice. So it was a fun thing. I think Des had offered me 650 quid a month at the time. This was 1984. And just because I was sort of weird, I said, can you make it 666? So he goes, all right then.
What a rebel.
Yeah, so he gave me £666 a month to do all
But he was charging.
But somebody had put a 1 in front of the 666. I have no idea who that is. I never saw anybody do it, but
we could only speculate. Yeah,
I can only speculate.
So since this is our Quality Comics episode, I do have to ask you, I never met Deskin, but whenever his name comes up, it's like, Frau Blucher and Young Frankenstein, it's like, Deskin.
No,
this guy's a legend.
Yeah, he is. I mean, Des is someone who was, I think, when he started out, was very smart, had some great, wonderful ideas, fantastic. He started up, obviously he started, before Warrior, he started sort of House of Hammer, Starburst magazine, which was a science fiction sort of monthly magazine, dealing with TV and film. He's smart. When you met him, he was charming. He was a good laugh. He was self-deprecating. He would do anything to sort of he would want to finish early just so he could go down the pub with him and drink and play pool or something.
Well, I mean, that doesn't differentiate him from most British publishers, but sure.
Right, but again, it was kind of, but it's one of those things when Des was probably, it wasn't the first person in comics I met, but it was the first person who I met when I was kind of getting into the business. And it was only later, I would go to we had these little, the little comic convention I went to today, we called them London Marts, comic marts. And we used to go to them at the time, and they were in Westminster in London. And they were neat. You could go to one of these marts and then you go to the pub around the corner with your comics and have a pint. And there'd be Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, Kev O'Neill, Mike McMahon, all of those guys just hanging around, and we're all chatting. And totally approachable. Everyone was just talking about comic fans. Everyone was like, "What have you bought?" Like, "Oh, what about this? Oh, did you see this? Oh my God, where did you get that from?" Like having Alan Moore suddenly get up and run around and see if he could go back in and get a copy of what he just bought. And that's what it was like. And I remember talking to Kev O'Neill, and he goes, "Oh, so you're the latest working with Des?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes like, "Oh," he goes, so he goes, "Is he screwed you yet?" And I was like, "No." And it was like, "Oh, okay, well, all right, well, let's." He literally goes like, "Let's set our watches then, shall we?" And I actually remember trying to defend Des. I was actually saying, well, like, he might have screwed people over in the past, but this like, why would he screw people over? Because this isn't his money. How naive of me. But yeah, he was. I think it's that thing of like, I think he probably lost a lot of money doing Warrior, and suddenly realized that like there was no one helping him out. It also caused ill will because once he got the chance to make some money with the clips, he wasn't being entirely honest with the money situation. So when I said that I inked those, re-inked those Marvel Man pages, Des literally offered me like, $12-15 a page to do those because he said, "Look, I don't have any money. They're not giving me any money to do this. I have no budget. I'm paying you out of my pocket. Like I've got nothing. Well, they're not paying me." So I was like, and I just like I took that as, "Oh, okay, right. So yeah, no worries. I'll do that for you." And then this was before we started doing the Quality Comics material, the reprinting the Dread material. So I did that for him. And I remember I got about maybe 150 quid or something like that for all the pages I inked. And then I remember once we'd started up and running, I walked because I had to walk through his shop to go down into the basement to work in our office. And one day there was a portfolio of original artwork on the front. And I was dead curious now. I'm going, "Oh, I didn't know Des was selling original artwork." So I just started opening it up. And he had work in there by John Ridgway. And I'm looking at that. I'm going like, "Oh, okay, he's acting as agent for John," because I knew he'd worked with him on Warrior. And then I see his page and I go like, and it just says Don Lawrence. And I'm going like, "Oh, Des has some Don Lawrence original." So I turn the page and it's my pages that I've re-inked of Don Lawrence Marvel Man stories from the late 1950s, early 1960s.
Wow. And
he's selling them for like £100 a page or something. And there's clearly some pages have been sold. So I said to Des, I was like, "What's this about?" And he goes, "Well, I told you they didn't give me any money, so I had to sort of like, I'm trying to get my money back. But look, I'll take you for a pint. I'll take you for a pint."
So, I don't fuck your beer.
So he bought a couple of pints. So I'm still going like, it's what it is.
Nah, bro, you too nice, bro. I'm from New York.
Oh yeah.
So a couple of years to complete the story. A couple of years later, and I'm no longer talking to Des at this point because I realized some other things he'd done.
So he was a leech.
No, I don't like using that name because Gary Leach was my partner on A1, so he was a good guy.
Man.
Well, he was dishonest. He was dishonest.
Yeah. That's disgusting.
Some people have said that about him. Let's leave it at that. So I'm at San Diego Comic-Con, and I finally get to talk and meet and talk to Dean Mulaney. And I get to his side of it, and I'm going like, and I just like, "Hey," and it was just like, I introduced myself and we're having a nice little chat, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I love A1, that's great." It's like, "Have you ever thought about collecting it?" And I was like, "No, we didn't have any rights. We don't have the rights to it. We only took one printing, no reprint, no foreign right, all that sort of thing." So he goes like, "Oh, yeah, are you going to learn?" I said like, "Well, no, that's the way I would like to be treated, and I'll continue to do the same way." They went, "Oh, okay, fair enough." And then I just said, "Look, there's a question I've always been wanting to ask you. Since I met you." I said, like,
I'm gonna bomb.
Yeah, so it's like when you were reprinting the Marvel Man stuff, were you paying Des for it? And he goes like, "Well, yeah, he did. Okay. Did you pay him for the 3D special?" And he goes, "Oh, that was such a pain in the ass. It's like we had a lot of trouble with that, and Des was being really, really awkward with it. But yeah, I mean, he got $300 a page for that." And so I was like, "Oh, that's a very interesting." He goes, "Why?" So I had to recreate pages for that. He goes, "Oh, how much did you get?" I said, like $15. And he went, "Oh." So, yeah.
So,
That's crazy.
well, I mean, of course, Dean and Eclipse, they were also, as time went on, embroiled in all sorts of accusations about stuff. And Dean is still around. He's doing some really great reprints. Stuff. We correspond still, as a matter of fact, and he is a lifer.
I think Dean is probably, in many respects, probably a little like Des. If Des kind of had, I mean, I think kind of ego. I think probably they both got to a situation where they thought they could do the publishing as well. Like they could do this packaging, but they could do the publishing as well.
Right.
And it's such a grind, like particularly if you're picking monthly books. If you've got X amount of titles, you've got to keep going, and you've got that grind of doing it, I think. And then you're putting your own money into it, and it kind of like when it starts to go, if it doesn't go well, like you start panicking, you're doing things, but you haven't learnt real publishing. You're doing with what you think is in your gut. You're doing, okay, well, this is what I think I'll do next, like to see if I can shore up this. And sometimes it might include, well, I've got some royalties to pay somebody. They haven't asked for them yet, so I'm just going to push those royalties into to pay my rent this month instead, and then I'll explain. I'll get, if they ask for the money, I'll say I'll get it to them soon. And that sort of thing, that's the sort of thing you notice that keeps going on, and you get embroiled in that, and you get caught up in that, and eventually, and all it takes is one, like, Borders Books deciding that they're going to return everything that they've got of yours, and the money you were expecting from that.
Is it that easy for Borders Books to kind of reject an order like that?
Yeah, that's how Tokyo Pop nearly got completely wiped out.
Whoa.
Borders Books they were ordering masses of quantities from Tokyo Pop, and Tokyo Pop thought that this was going to be forever money, so they kept on pumping out more and more titles.
Overproduced.
And then when Borders got really, like, it literally got to the point where if they'd kept those books for one more week, they would have had to literally pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for these books. And they took every Tokyo Pop book off the shelf and sent them back to Tokyo Pop.
Yeah.
Just when Tokyo Pop thought they were gonna, like, oh, we've got a great big paycheck coming next week, and instead they get like thousands and thousands and thousands of books coming back to them.
As a publisher, man, like, how would you even feel about that type of return?
You're gonna soil yourself. I mean, it's just that's the sort of thing that is like, in that moment you're done. Like, and they pretty much were done. I mean, it was.
Well, then Borders also declared bankruptcy, so that didn't help either.
Yeah.
Insane.
So what are the other things? So just to wrap this up, okay? Yeah. So what are the other things, just to set the scene, because you're about to leave Quality and you're about to start your own A1.
Well,
but okay, go on, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, literally, when I left working, when I realized, like, literally, I'd spent 2 months in New York, and I'd come back and thinking like, oh, I've got a couple of paychecks waiting for me, and they weren't there for me just before Christmas. And I was lucky enough. I think it might have been Will Simpson I'd got to know Will Simpson because he liked Des, and he was doing a little bit of work for Des as well as doing other things for other companies. And it was Will, I think, who introduced me to Marvel. And so I started, I think Richard Starking's at Marvel, and I started inking at Marvel. And that kind of saved my saved my ass a bit. And then Gary Leach and myself, I'd got to know Gary Leach very well by this point. And we started doing, like, he was like, hey, look, I'm going to do a bunch of Judge Dredd's. Will you help me out on them? And I said, like, yeah, sure. I was inking his stuff on Judge Dredd. And then we did a few episodes together under a different name, just to sort of, because he wanted to experiment to see if he could break out of his style. Like he knew that if he used his own name, he was getting he took forever on everything. And he thought that if he used a different name, he could, like a pseudonym, like we could crank out some work. He could actually get some work done. And it didn't work. He still took the same amount of work. I think.
That's amazing.
But it was in that time that we started talking about A1.
Okay. So we're going to get, that'll be our next episode, will be A1. But again, to talk about just what you were saying about the returns from Tokyo Pop, at this time, we are in the early years. I mean, I guess early, it's been around for maybe 10 years, but maybe only established for about 5 years of the direct market, the United States direct market. And this, everybody's like, oh, the DM destroys that. The DM is so bad for this, and all true, except that it was buying comics on a non-returnable basis. So this gave publishers this, this platform or this basis. Like if they sold 2,000 copies, they sold 2,000 copies. They were not getting 2,000 or 1,549 of them back. And so, in the magazine distribution system in the United States at that point was just dying because it was so inefficient with all the returns. It was mired in graft, mired in corruption.
I was going to say the mafia.
Yes, the mafia, whatever, the mob, whatever you want to call it. And so that system was basically dying, and comics were no longer available on the newsstand. And then by the early 80s, this direct market of comic shops had developed, and it was very lucrative. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it was very, in its own way, stable. And, you did not have to worry about the returns. And that was really, really revolutionary. And it's part of what enabled them to do revolutionary things like Dark Knight, Watchmen, and, which was, at this time that we're getting to was coming out. So I'm probably, there was probably a lot more comic shops then than there are now, but
I'd say, I was talking about this today. I think there was probably about 5 times as many as there were today.
I don't know about 5 times, but I would say there was probably 5,000-6,000, something like that. I think.
No, we're at. So I think currently, the last count I've been told by anybody was close to 4,000. Diamond has 4,000 accounts.
Yeah, but that's not shops.
That includes baseball card supply stuff and mail order companies and stuff like that. But I know that there was a point. At least twice as many as that.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to see, like in this next period of the late 80s is the black and white boom, where we're seeing unknown black and white comics selling 10,000, 20,000 copies on a non-returnable basis, and people were making bank. Okay, they were making a lot of money at this time, and it crashes very quickly, but this all existed. But so this is the milieu that exists here as we're going to enter the next chapter of the Dave Elliott story, or Comics Will Kill You, except not the three
Comics
of us.
Will Kill You, period. Because I can't take responsibility for the black and white boom.
No, you were not. But
I was part of it. But not by any means a leader of. I think I was talking to someone about Dave Simmons' Cerebus today, which was probably something we'll talk about later. But that was a really good example of a well done black and white comic, published and marketed like successfully and very well.
And monthly, it came out every month. And if it didn't come out, we complained.
Yeah.
That was something else we were talking about today.
We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more, because this podcast is always monthly, all right? So, folks, that's it. This is a wrap on the premiere, fam. So, a big shout out to my tag team here of truth, Dave Elliott and Heidi MacDonald for dropping the realness and keeping it 100. Now, you guys, you rocking them earbuds or watching us on the screen, hit that subscribe, smash that like, and share this with every comic book head you know, from Wednesday Warriors to those Kickstarters, kings and queens. So don't just listen, though, all right? Well, as we go live, we need you to jump in, drop in the convos with your hot takes, your predictions, your and all crazy comments in the chat and on socials, all respectful, of course. And use that hashtag of comic Crusaders Will Kill You podcast, so we can find you, maybe even feature you in the next episode. Now, before I finish, what's up, Dave?
Well, I was just going to say, it's like even underneath here, it's like if like you've just listening to this, you might have heard some of the subjects we're going to be touching. So if you have any questions that like you go like, oh, I've always wondered about this. So it might not even be so remember this, it might not even be something that I have experience of, but I might have knowledge of.
Oh yeah.
And same for Heidi. Like we might, between the two of us, I think there's some there's some things that we probably can piece together for you. So if you have questions,
please hit me up on Blue Sky. My DMs are open on Blue Sky. So if you have questions for me and Dave and Al, just put them up there. We are going to dissect some of the secret history of comics here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is what it is. Remember, we're not here to play nice. We're here to absolutely be real. The comic industry, it's wild, it's beautiful, it's messy, but it's worth fighting for. And here, we're going to be talking about it all. You feel me? So until next time, I'm Al Mega with the amazing Dave Elliott, which you can follow on X at DWV Elliott and on Facebook at Atomica Press. That's ATOMEKA Press. And then of course you could go Comics Will Kill You podcast. We have a comic book website coming soon. You can follow us on the podcast on X at Comics Will Kill You with the little U at the end. Of course, you got to follow the big boss, the queen herself, Heidi, on X at Comics Space. That's X Comics with an X. And of course, one of the most important journalistic websites. Listen, my Comic Crusaders is all fun. I do my previews and little reviews and all. But when you want to get down into the nitty gritty of what comics is, listen, not for real. But Heidi was one of these people that inspired me in my journey. So I'm more than happy to be working with her. And I suggest everyone, when you want to really get into the nitty gritty of comics, the industry itself, in a very journalistic and just dead ass, honest, real way. I love how you're so direct, Heidi. Much respect to you. Check out comicsbeat.com, baby. But of course, you can also follow me, baby, Al Mega, the real Al Mega, and the Comic Crusaders. Where we celebrate indie comics and creators. I'm the cheerleader for my indie folks. The future of comics is where we're at. Heidi's gonna report on y'all when y'all really super big, and find out the nitty gritty. She could be using me as research when I reviewed you and interviewed you guys when y'all were just starting out. That's right, baby. I dig it. But this is what the Comics Will Kill You podcast. Dave, Heidi, Mega, la próxima, mi gente. Huepa.
Thank you so much.